Heated gamer moment. Anytime that phrase is uttered within the online sphere, most of us instantly know that a popular streamer or public figure said an oopsie while gaming. Often these oopsies are slurs. Two notable examples being the time PewDiePie said the N-word on that now infamous bridge in PUBG, or when deadmau5 said a homophobic term that rhymes with tag while also playing PUBG. Whenever these moments happen, people within the media, alongside hordes of online netizens, race to label the bad word utterer a racist or homophobe. From their perspective, simply saying those terms are proof that their usage is common and widespread within that gamer's lexicon. Therefore, they are clearly bigoted. But does that perspective hold merit? Or might there be another reason people say naughty words while angry? Well, this wouldn't be a video if I was going to argue in agreement with the former, so sit back, relax, and allow me to detail the science behind heated gamer moments. Just bear with me on this, there's quite a bit to explain. Whether consciously realized or not, words are one of the ultimate expressions of rage. In moments of fury, the worst ones come to mind. Think hitting your thumb with a hammer and yelling fuck, or stubbing your toe on a chair and letting loose a torrent of so-called curse words. This is common with all of us, and it is due to the structuring of our brains. One of my favorite explanations of this process comes from Benjamin Bergen's book, What the F? What Swearing Reveals About Our Language, Our Brains, and Ourselves. Its author is a professor of cognitive sciences at the University of California, so trust he knows what he is talking about. Anyways, in an early chapter, Professor Bergen explains aphasia. This is brain damage that typically results from dementia and stroke, and the condition makes it difficult or impossible to articulate and string together words. However, even to those suffering its effects, some spontaneous language is preserved. Preservation, which can include swear words and slurs. The explanation for this phenomena is that such words are stored somewhere else in the brain, at least, and this is important, when they are maintained for emotional usage. I won't keep citing scientific literature to you beyond this, but as explained in Ray Kurzweil's book, How to Create a Mind, the language structure of the human brain is very hierarchical. Put simply, when it comes to how we use language, we rely on different centers within the brain. Before continuing, I want to stress that I understand that it's easy to instantly become emotional when you hear certain words. If I was a person of color and I heard a YouTuber drop the N-bomb because they died within a game, it is likely I'd be momentarily irked. But we are not meant to be wholly driven by our emotions, and it's important to step back and understand the circumstances we encounter every day. When it comes to the various uses of words and phrases, it's necessary to determine context and intent. Things said in frustration differ from those same things said in a purposely derogatory way. For instance, if I hear a gamer shout a homosexual slur because he died in PUBG, I often don't care. At most I roll my eyes because he's letting emotional outbursts drive him, but I understand it's not stemming from an actual bigoted belief. That same courtesy I won't extend to the Westboro Baptist Church because, as their signs make clear, they're actually homophobic assholes who'd like to see me burn. Now, certainly in some instances, a gamer having a heated gamer moment is laced in actual hate for whatever group of people such slurs are commonly used for. This video isn't an attempt to feign ignorance and sweep all hate under the rug, but since it's usually public figures who come under fire for saying naughty words, we can look through their very public history and come to a logical determination of their beliefs. And the reality of the situation is that the majority of the time, such people aren't actually hateful. They just got too emotional. A fairly common occurrence given reflexive swearing is emotionally driven and not planned given where it flares up in the brain. A simple fact of language is that it's all about context. No word is inherently bad, as even the one society has deemed the worst can still be used in alternative ways. The N-word is a strong example of this. Consider how within certain circles it's been reclaimed by the people it used to be thrown at, and now it's almost a term of endearment when used amongst themselves. Similarly, words we typically don't think of as offensive can be used as such in the right circumstances. If I mockingly call someone suffering from epidermal myplasia verrucocumis a tree, they could get rightfully angry, but tree isn't a bad word. I just used it in a context that makes me an asshole. But just as there's the intentional usage of words, as in my most recent examples, where those using them know exactly what they're saying, there's also the unintentional usage of them, as with emotional outbursts. Yet tragically few bother to take emotional contexts into consideration, and so netizens jump right onto the cancellation bandwagon. Perhaps, ironically so, they process everything through an emotional filter. People trapped within its whirlpool would disagree, but there's very little rational irrational thought in the reactionary abyss that is social media, even in instances where the phrases said can literally not be controlled. Consider the story of Sweet Anita. Anita is a fairly large Twitch streamer who also battles Tourette's. Part of her popularity stems from the fact that she's been able to juxtapose her charming personality with her sometimes vile outbursts. This in turn has allowed her to educate fans about a neurodevelopmental disability that many would otherwise only know about from jokes in film and TV. Earlier this year, though, outrage mongers stepped up their game, and with the belief that context never matters, Anita became a target for their ire for saying a bad phrase while streaming. She was hit by a particularly bad tic, which resulted in her blurting out, "Kill the Jews." And within a day, social media and various comment sections came alight with coordinated calls for her cancellation. In now deleted tweets, another popular streamer openly called for Twitch to deplatform Anita over what she said. The problem is, some people suffering from Tourette's experience a symptom called coprolalia. That symptom heavily affects an area of the brain called the basal ganglia, which is tied into the language and emotion centers. The placement of this condition forces those with that specific symptom of the disability to make involuntary sounds which can come out as offensive phrases. To tie everything together, and yes, the following includes people without Tourette's who say stuff while heated within a game, or in any other instance of anger, really. The reason such specifically offensive language is spewed is because we are all well aware of what the most socially unacceptable words are. And due to the high emotions and stigmas often associated with such slurs, they are, for lack of a better word, stored within the emotional realm of the brain. Whether it is an emotional outburst because you died in a game, an emotional outburst because you hit your thumb with a hammer, or whether you have Tourette's and you've got coprolalia and you're forced to say a bad word because you can't control it. All those little emotional words are stored in the basal ganglia, and they come out when we are emotional, or if we have developmental disabilities that affect it. That is why we have heated gamer moments. I want to be clear that this isn't an attempt to fully compare someone with Tourette's to someone who gets pissy because their kill-death ratio in Call of Duty is abysmal. This isn't to justify or excuse emotional immaturity. It also goes without saying, but being mad within a game is not a disability. Meanwhile, Tourette's obviously is. But it's by understanding how the brain functions and the way in which emotionally charged words are stored that we can remove the misguided belief that those who utter bad words in frustration are bigots. PewDiePie isn't a racist for saying the N-word. He just got too emotional, and as you now know, due to the structuring of the brain, things he otherwise would never say spewed forth because emotion is a fickle bitch. That is the reality and context of the situation. Although cancel culture has no care in the world for pondering the whys behind certain events. To warriors of rage, the process running in their near empty minds is this word bad, so this person must be bad. It's faulty logic to be sure, and to recall recent years' NPC meme, their programming needs an update. Listen, it's easy to ask for words to be blanket banned. It's easy to say that if you utter a certain word, you should be deplatformed. It's easy to ignore context and rely on emotional reactions to guide oneself. But easy isn't what's right. We are supposed to be an intelligent species, yet sadly more people are reverting away from the logical thinking that should be propelling us towards the future. I don't want the following to come across as me building a straw man, but I do know some people watching this will instantly argue that preventing the usage of slurs and swearing is righteous, and that it's easy to just not say them. The rationale will be that they're bad words, and that using such words is uninclusive and will only hurt those that hear it. Therefore, gamers who say them are bigots who should be cancelled. But they're wrong. Deplatforming solves nothing. It allows zero room for growth, and few lessons are learned when one loses everything, more so when the people being ended are already demonstrably emotionally immature. The solution here is that people must learn to properly determine what is hateful and what is not. Not to be a broken record, but in the case of angry gamers, they more often than not are not expressing bigoted hate speech. I would argue they aren't above reprimanding. Twitch being a global platform can understandably not allow people with millions of child followers to drop slurs all willy-nilly. But there's ways to reprimand people without outright kicking them off a platform. Punishments should fit the misdeed, and they should also allow room for those being punished to learn from their mistakes and to grow. Stepping away from that, and speaking just in general, as adults we need to learn to be emotionally mature and to properly control our impulses. I mean, if you angrily tell your boss at work to fuck off, that won't end very well. And most people avoid that by understanding the severity of such an outburst. The same logic applies here. Losing in a game sucks, but don't let it control you. Get a hold of your anger, which I admit is easier said than done. And let's be real, a lot of us battle real-world stress, and often the loss in a game is the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not the root cause of the outburst, it's just the last itch of frustration one can handle. Which is why we must give people the opportunity to learn and improve. Emotional maturity doesn't form overnight, and we are a society that is already emotionally stunted. A stunting that is aided along by those who absolutely refuse to look at the world through a lens of rationality. Not everyone who speaks ill is hateful, and cancel culture is not the answer to anything. People need to learn to look beyond the words they see and hear and better judge the reasoning behind their use. Anything else is ignorant and unscientific.